Hey everybody, welcome again to Real Talk with Eugene. I'm Eugene Holden, and I want to first give a shout out to New Thought Media Network that is bringing all of this beautiful content to the world. You know, assisting to uplift, and just be a voice in the world. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And today, man, I have one of my bestest friends on with me, and that's my brother, Reverend Masando Hiraoka. Good morning, brother.
Good morning, man.
How are you, man?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right.
Good.
Just, doing this thing called life. Still living.
Yeah, right, right. So man, as you and I spoke a little bit about this yesterday, it's really a continuation, Masando, of what we've been talking about all along. It seems like. And so this series that I'm doing right now on Real Talk is having a new thought on new thought. Because you know, as last week I was talking about it, is like new thought, ancient wisdom. We've heard new thought, ancient wisdom phrases, but it's really, for me, it was a new thought on ancient wisdom. So now I want to have a new thought on new thought. And what I wanted to talk to you about today, my brother, is where do we, not just you, but me and myself and I and everybody else, where do we see new thought? How does it fit in with the current circumstances, with the current vibration of what's going on in the world today? The USA, the world, where and how do we show up?
Mm-hmm.
you know
Yeah.
So with, man, there's so much going on, man. There's so much going on.
It's a little bit
We
going
have,
on right now.
man, there's so much going on. We have this pandemic thing that's going on. And then we have all of this social injustice that's going on around the world. But I want to kind of keep it here within the USA. And as a minister of New Thought and as a practitioner of New Thought, one of the things that I can constantly ask myself is, okay, how do I show up? you know what's mine to do, and try to keep it on that quote unquote spiritual thing. But I'm tired of being in that vibration of kumbaya.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it all depends on how we are approaching living out this philosophy, right? Because if we are kind of, which I love about this, like there's so many different ways to approach this. But what I'm seeing happening in the world right now, right, is we're being asked to expand our sense of self beyond just this, beyond only looking out for me. And the thing about New Thought, like in general, it's been a lot about the self, right? Like it's been a lot about me, myself, and I. Like it's all about personal transformation. It's all about my own thoughts, my own consciousness. And that, like, all I ever have to really focus on is this internal world. And I should actually not only do that, but like presence that and make that the most primary thing, like the most spiritual thing to do is not look at all of the circumstances going on out there, and instead just always just focus in here, right? Which is great. I think in a lot of social justice circles in the world, when we're seeking to try and make it a little bit better, that personal aspect often gets left out. I think New Thought's kind of on the opposite side, right? I think New Thought, honestly, in general, we focus too much on ourselves. And it can, like, ironically, create this thing within us that kind of like puts wanting to put blinders on in what's going on in the world, right? Spiritually bypass our way to feeling good about what's going on, to simply say it's all good, it's all God, doesn't make sense anymore. Like,
Right.
it doesn't feel relevant to only focus on oneself. In fact, it feels like it can actually be detrimental
Right.
to our ability to be full humans. It could be detrimental to our spiritual path if we are only focusing on ourselves. I think where we're growing, I think our growing edge in New Thought right now is taking this spirituality and this approach and bringing it out to the collective, and not just thinking about ourselves, not throwing that out,
Right.
but recognizing that like there's like a real limit to that. There's a real limit to only looking at personal transformation. There's a real limit to only focusing on what's going on here in our own minds and our own hearts, and not wanting to look at how these same principles of co-creation are happening out in the world, and how we can be a part of changing that and affecting that, you know?
Yeah. I was speaking earlier with Reverend Dr. Judy Morley about this, same thing. And it's interesting that you were saying the same thing that she said earlier this morning in our talk, and because it is about, that personal growth. And what came up for me, and it came up for me with you just now, is, I mean, all of that's good. Yes, we need to heal whatever we need to heal, but also we are wanting to not stay. And this is the word that I use, separate, because when we look at it, when I look at it, it's all about me, and I really don't need you, because it's all about my thoughts and how I deal with this, and so there's a sense of separation there, which is an interesting contradictive thing to how it's taught, because there's no separation. Yeah, but if it's all about me, oh, but we're all one, but it's all about, so there's this, and you're right. I mean, I think which is why I'm having this conversation with you, and I'm going to have more with other folks as well, having a new thought on this, and what does it really mean? I remember coming across a quote by Dr. Holmes, who said, science of mind is like this ship, right? New thought is like this ship that will take us so far, but you got to get off the ship to keep going.
We've hit land.
We've hit land. Great. And there's more land to explore. There's land to explore. But here's the thing about that land, it's populated by other folks.
Yeah, we're no longer on our own island or our own ship.
Right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've been really working within myself is how do I, and you and I talked about this briefly, in terms of my spirituality, because as you know, for me, my spirituality is very, very important to me. So now finding that balance and wanting to use that spirituality, that spiritual power, to go out and assist in making the change, and speak. You and I spoke about this as well, not being afraid to speak up and speak out. I'm tired of not speaking up. I'm tired of not speaking out for fear of rocking the boat, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what we're waking up to.
Yeah.
Well, also, man, okay, let's real talk.
It's real talk.
Let's be real about the culture in which New Thought has largely been a part of. Let's be real about the fact that, okay, our country is having a reckoning with white supremacy, and now we can say that out loud.
Right.
Thank God. And now we are taking a look in which white supremacy has shown up in all aspects of our American society. In almost every single, not almost, every single institution and system in which we are a part of.
Right.
And New Thought is not separate from that.
Right.
Brian Akers is a prophetic voice. He put out a manifesto about this, calling out how white supremacy was present in Centers for Spiritual Living. Now,
Right.
it was not well received at first, but I know that right now it probably would be much more well received, because here's the thing, man. That fear of speaking out, which I also have, that fear of rocking the boat, which I also have, is rooted in oppression, is rooted in white supremacy, is rooted in the fact that, like, if you do speak out, you will be punished, right? If you do say something, if you do something that tries to interrupt this culture and this system in which we are all a part, like, that will not be okay. So let's be real in the fact that New Thought has white supremacy that has been built into it unknowingly. It has privileged white folks. It has, in many ways, been a theology that has privileged privilege, right? That has talked about folks that are able to manifest things in their lives as having higher consciousness. That has Ernest Holmes himself talked about the reason why people are poor is because this is in the original textbook, which got taken out eventually. But like, if people are poor, it is a result of their own consciousness or the consciousness of that community, right? Like, let's be real in saying that there were immense amount of blind spots that were created by the white supremacy culture in which we all were a part of, in which New Thought got filtered through because it is inherently an American religion and philosophy and theology, that it was not able to escape the filter of oppression and supremacy, right? And we've seen that play out, and I think we're coming to a reckoning with that too. So that fear of rocking the boat, I think, is a natural that I have too. That is just a natural manifestation of the culture in which we've been having to navigate, right? And that's hard to like reckon with. But to me, like, we have to be able to talk about these things, like talk about the ways in which this has shown up.
Right. You know, as you know, I have this. You know, I am co-host with a Wednesday podcast called Race Talk, and we're talking about the same thing. And one of the resources that I need to look through, and is how the Atlantic slave trade that brought the Africans, you know, here to America, has such a deep impact on the DNA of African Americans now. You know, I remember, and this was a memory that I had that came up over this past week. I remember I was about 8 or 9 years old walking down the street in Pasadena. And I was walking down the street with my mother, and this white woman was walking towards us. And my mother grabbed my hand and said to me, "Do not look at her in the eyes and don't say a word." Right? And I was 8. And I had forgotten about that until just recently. But this is something that has been inherently a part of this culture. Came across a beautiful saying that is so true, and it can be a disheartening line that white supremacy racism was here even before the United States became the United States. Right? So it has been here all along. So New Thought, as you said, I love this, man, has been unconsciously or maybe consciously, depending, I wasn't there, but a part of this whole thing.
Totally.
A part of this whole thing. So me being, up until now, afraid to speak up about the truth is I'm ready to let that go. You know, I was telling somebody about this, right? And this is so cool, Masando. I love it when you and I talk. I was telling somebody that there's this urge within me that wants to talk more about this, and I can no longer keep this down. It's like trying to hold a volleyball down underneath the water, right? And you just can't do it. And so somebody asked me, so what has kept that down? I said, fear. Fear has kept that down. But then the visual was, it was this fear, this net of fear that was holding the ball down. But then what came to me, man, was this net has all these strands, and these are different strands of fear that now I'm having to not just look at, but to snip and to cut and not be afraid, because it is time to have a new thought on what we call new thought, and not have it such an exclusive thing. If we're talking about inclusion, well, then that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the theology itself, however, right, like, can still liberate us from these things, like, regardless of the culture in which it was created in, and maybe even helped to perpetuate unknowingly. It still has this possibility, because it's rooted in, like, no matter what is, we can co-create something new. No matter what has come before, we have an ability to look at what has been driving us and to choose something new to drive us.
Right.
So, even if this is the way, like, even if we're coming into a deeper realization of the ways in which white supremacy culture has been a part of new thought, right? Knowingly or unknowingly. I think probably mostly unknowingly. Especially when you, like, read Ernest's writings, and he really came to become an advocate in so many ways for civil rights. But it's so steeped that it's hard for any of us to separate ourselves from it. And so I think our job right now is recognizing, we have inner work to do. And the first is like admitting that we're all a part of it. Even people of color, can perpetuate it by not speaking up. Even people of color can perpetuate it with this whole colorism spectrum, of recognizing that, which it's really easy to do, like, anytime we get an opportunity by assimilating into the culture, right? Anytime we're given a greater platform, or anytime we're able to just fit in, right? Belonging versus fitting in. Belonging is for you, who you are. Fitting in is fitting into whatever culture and being accepted because of that. I think anybody who has to try to fit in, but then gets opportunity, like, that's. But anytime we say yes to sort of sacrificing some part of ourselves in order to fit in, to gain that opportunity, that's also perpetuating the very system that we're trying to transform and change, right? But we can always choose again. And that's what I think I love about this philosophy, is like, it requires us to be totally honest with ourselves and, hopefully with each other, so that we can choose better. So we can make better choices.
To be vulnerable, right? Enough to talk about it.
Yeah. And hopefully suspend judgment enough, which I know is hard for me to do, but to suspend judgment enough to, like, allow everybody to stay whole too. Like, that's another piece I love about new thought, is like, how can we really believe, if we really believe in this thing called wholeness, right? Like, that each and every one of us are whole, perfect, and complete. Like, how do we allow that wholeness to stay intact regardless, right? How can dignity and wholeness stay intact? And I'm not always good at that, right? But I feel like that's a tenet of our theology that could be practiced a little bit more when we're having a new thought on new thought. Is like, okay, how can everybody's wholeness stay intact, and how can we transform the ways in which our culture is manifesting? How can we be brave enough to look at the ways in which supremacy and racism have shown up in our churches, in our centers, in our communities, in our organization? How can we really call these things out, but do so without shame and guilt, and allowing everybody's wholeness to stay intact? Right.
Without shame and guilt. And what was going to come up for me also is to add to that list, without shame, without guilt, with
I don't know if that's my computer or Eugene's. I don't know what he was going to say, but I would say without shame, without guilt, and also like without fear. I really resonate with what Eugene was saying earlier about this idea of like not wanting to express in a certain way out of fear, or not wanting to rock the boat out of fear, right? I think one of the things I've come to really recognize in myself, and this might be a part of my personality, or just a part of being like often the only non-white person in so many spaces I've grown up in. I've had amazing opportunities. I've had a tremendous amount of privilege when it comes to the education I've received. But I've always felt this strange need to fit in with whatever space that I'm in, right? And I think part of my personality, I'm an Enneagram 3, is like this code switching kind of thing. It's this idea of whatever group I'm in, like I feel like I have a need, and then have developed like an ability to kind of code switch and talk about and really talk like whatever group I happen to be in. And I recognize that can be detrimental. But once that fear goes away, I can allow myself. Oh, Gino, you're back. I was talking about not just guilt and shame, but like letting go of fear too. And I was just talking about my fear of rocking the boat comes from my real need to fit in, right? Like to any culture that I'm in, right? And growing up in mostly white spaces, how I just always felt that kind of pressure. Like I just need to prove that like I'm just like everybody else. I'm just like you guys. So that I can, have friends and benefit in the same ways that everybody else does. So
yeah.
I don't know what you were gonna say.
I was going to say, without the guilt, without the shame, and I was going to say without the guilt, the fear, the shame, and the anger, and but what I realized is that it's okay to be mad.
Totally.
One of the things that I've seen throughout my years in this philosophy, over 30 years, but particularly over the last 15, is that, if someone shows, some anger, well, that's not practicing the principles, because, but anger is okay. It's a part of who I am. Now, what's important is how I express that, right? But no, you can't be angry because you're a practitioner. Yeah. But it's okay, for me to be, angry about watching people die
Mm.
at the hands of people who are in authority.
In
It's
power.
okay to be angry, over watching the BS go on, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, and it's not only okay, I would say it's unhealthy if we're not responding in that way. You
Right.
know, I would say something we got to take a look at something if if we're witnessing those things and anger and sadness and all the natural human reactions, if those aren't present, like if through our spiritual lens we're only able to really allow ourselves the permission to experience peace, love, joy, and all the things that we like to pray about and talk about as qualities of the divine, which I think also I would love for us to stop, uh, to stop like assigning certain qualities to the divine, right? Because what we're inherently doing in that is we're assigning things that aren't part of love, peace, joy, abundance, prosperity, whatever, all those things. If all those other things are like something else, like, okay, those are qualities of the divine. What is anger? What is sadness? What is
Right.
depression? What is, what are those? Are those not qualities of the divine? Like, then if they're not qualities of the divine, and if we only believe in one, then what are they? Right? Do
Right.
we believe in the devil then? Do we have to assign something else like to those things, or are those also a part of the divine too? Right?
Right. Right.
Like, are those also necessary expressions of this thing called life? Uh, so I think I think you're right. I think anger has its place. And also, let's be real, a part of racism and supremacy culture is to overly focus on the ways something is said rather than the content of what is being
Oh
stated,
my God.
right? Like, oh, if you would only just say this in a nice way, then maybe we would listen to you, right? Like, what the fuck? Like, like, why? Why? That's
Right.
a part of this culture. That's a part of what keeps oppression real. That's part of what
Right.
keeps systems intact, right?
Right.
And then we have to come up, we or whoever is speaking out against something through anger, then has to like do everything they can to say this, not only like speak the thing, which is hard enough in itself because it's so just riddled with trauma and sadness and the like in the DNA, just like you were talking about, but then like have to like say it in the perfect right way so that it will be received by folks. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a part of the whole system too, man.
Yeah, it is.
And that's what I hope we can interrupt and then
Right.
create something new.
I believe it's in the book, Me and White Supremacy. This whole thing about tone policing.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Well, if you say it, if you only say it, if you say it in a different way, maybe I could hear it. So, but what that person is saying to me is, however I'm saying it, it is disturbing them. But then that also keeps me from really expressing my truth.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
No, let's have a new thought on that.
Let's have
you
a new
know?
thought on that. Let's have
Yeah.
a new
You
thought
know,
on that.
it's an interesting thing that you can say whatever, whatever it is that comes up for you, and you can say it and express it the way that you express it with all the passion. And I can say the same exact thing with all of the passion. And I'm not saying that I will be, but I may be looked at as an angry black man.
100%.
Right? Right? It's like, well, wait a minute, I just said the same thing in the same way. So these lenses
Mm,
of racism, white supremacy, which has been a part of the foundation of this beautiful country,
mm-hmm,
is what is being what's up now. It's
mm-hmm.
up to be seen, it's up to be talked about, and it's up to be healed. And it's
Yeah,
going to take a while.
it
You
is.
know, I'm not disenchanted enough to believe that it's going to be done like in the next day or two or year or 10 years, but at least we're talking about it now.
Yeah, I feel like every generation has their role to play in the expansion of consciousness around whatever, fill in the blank, and racism is a huge piece of that, right? Like,
Yeah.
we all have our role to play.
Yeah.
And it's often the young voices that are calling us all out,
Right.
and asking us to be better, right?
Yeah.
So we have to listen to those voices, and try to, because they are born. I've been thinking about this. I mean, I'm 38 years old, so I am, I'm approaching middle age, Gino. Bro, it's so real in so many ways. I get injured so easily. I have like back pain after I play frisbee golf. Like, what is happening in my life? I'm no longer like the young prophetic voice, right? So I'm looking to, especially this Gen Z that's coming up, right? The Gen Z that's coming up that has not known life without technology, that understands gender in a way that I was never taught, and how it is a non-binary form of expression and being, who have been at the forefront because they have suffered the most around gun control and the safety of the kids in our country, and who live in a world where they they're looking at the racist systems, and they have in many ways only known a world in which, like, after civil rights, in which, like, this should all be, like, this should all just be natural. You all, like, why is this stuff still happening? They're calling us all to be better, and I think we all have a role to play. Every generation has its role to play, and we're figuring out our specific role right now. And I'm loving it, man. I love that we're looking at every institution, every system.
Right.
You look at every organization, and I hope every organization recognizes this as a movement and not a moment. That they're not making token changes within their organization, but actually taking deeper dives, and looking at ways in which unconscious bias, if you want to talk about it that way, and racism has infiltrated their systems, right? And doing everything they can to interrupt that and create something new. Not because it's just the right thing to do, too, because let's be real, diverse companies and organizations do better. They make more money.
Right.
They have better outcomes. They're able to serve more people, right? So it's not just like this. It's not just like they're doing this because it's like a fad and it's the right thing to do. But hopefully, like, we're all also actually internalizing a value of it, a value of diversity that drives organizations, not as something that you just put up in your mission statement, just so you look a certain way, but like, no, you actually believe in this as a value in your organization. And so you're going to actually build your mission and your vision around that, and have it be a part of everything that you do. Right. I hope that's what my hope is, which includes, our prison industrial complex, which includes our court systems, which includes the way that our police and our policing happens, because let's also be real. When you look at the history of police, it's not pretty.
No, right? It's not.
The police were created to round up escaped former slaves from the Fugitive Slave Act. Let's be real about the creation of the police and why they were created.
The stock market, right?
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah, there's so much.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, man, having a new thought on new thought. New thought can be used to put on blinders, but new thought can also be used to wake yourself up.
Right. And that's why we're here, man. That's what we're here to do for myself, is to wake myself up, and also to provide a platform for others who are wanting to wake up too. Yeah.
We're all doing it together. It's messy.
Yeah.
It's imperfect. And it's beautiful. That's who we are as humans. We're messy. We're imperfect. We're doing the best we can. And, you know, we're learning along the way. There's beauty in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's perfect. Yeah.
That's perfect. Yeah.
My dear brother, as usual, it's always good, man. It's always good to sit down and converse with you. You know, it's like we always say, it's like when we do stuff like this, it's like we turn on the camera and invite folks into our front room, and because you and I just sit and talk. You know, so man. I want to thank you for being here today on Real Talk with Eugene. Once again, I want to thank New Thought Media Network for providing this platform. And I want to thank each and every one of you who have tuned in. So make sure that you let friends and family know that Real Talk is here every Thursday. I also want to put a shout out for Race Talk that's on Wednesdays, because we're having that conversation. And these are 2020, man, 2020. I love it, because when 2020 began, it was about, it's a new vision. It's perfect vision. Well, wait a minute. There's a cataract that needs to be extracted first. And we're going through that cataract extraction before we get to that new vision.
Yeah.
So my brother Masando, man, thank you so very much. I love you, man.
Love you too.
And we'll be talking soon.
You know it.
Peace.
You've been listening to Real Talk with Eugene Holden on the New Thought Media Network. If you've enjoyed this programming, please tell a friend and join us next week for more Real Talk with Eugene Holden.